I am here for the sexual and asexual organisms alike. Hello lovely humans, welcome to the space on the internet. My name's Elle and we're talking about asexuality. Asexuality, put simply, is a sexual orientation encompassing feeling little to no sexual attraction. A sexual orientation describes how and to whom someone experiences sexual attraction. For example, someone who is bisexual will experience sexual attraction to two or more genders. Similarly, asexuals may feel sexual attraction to nobody. I've also heard of asexuality described as a lack of sexual orientation, but the more popular definition will be a sexual orientation that involves feeling little to no sexual attraction. Many asexual people will use the term ace to describe themselves and other asexual people. You may hear me referring to myself and other asexual people as aces. AVEN, or the Asexual Visibility and Education Network, explains in their overview of asexuality that an asexual person does not experience sexual attraction. They are not drawn to people sexually and do not desire to act upon a sexual attraction to others in this sexual way. Unlike celibacy, which is a choice to abstain from sex or sexual activity, asexuality is an intrinsic part of who we are, just like other sexual orientations. Asexuality does not make our lives any worse or better, we just face a different set of needs and challenges than most sexual people do. There is a considerable diversity among the asexual community in needs and experiences often associated with sexuality, including relationships, attraction, and arousal. While estimates for the asexual proportion of the population are limited and may vary, the most widely cited figure is that we are roughly 1% of the population. If 1% sounds like a lonely figure, meaning that like 99% of the population is allosexual or experiences sexual attraction, I wouldn't worry too much. There's actually a lot of asexual people, and the asexual community is super diverse, and as asexuality gains more recognition in the general public eye, more people will get to know the term and come to identify with it. So the only criterion for identifying as asexual is someone's lack of sexual attraction, although it is important to note that asexuality exists on a spectrum. We love spectrums. So even those who do experience some sexual attraction or sexual attraction only in certain circumstances or otherwise irregular sexual attraction may still identify as asexual or under the asexual spectrum. For those of you who are wondering, here is the asexual flag. The black represents asexuality and lack of attraction. The gray represents asexual spectrum identities, including gray sexuality and demisexuality. The white represents allosexual identities, or people who do experience sexual attraction. And the purple represents the asexual community as a whole. So in summary, asexual people, or aces, just aren't that into people sexually. Just because someone is asexual doesn't mean they feel one particular way about sex. In this way, asexual people may find themselves on another spectrum of sorts, in terms of how they feel about sex. So asexuals may call themselves sex-repulsed or sex-averse. Asexuals who are sex-repulsed are opposed or repulsed by the idea of sex as a concept or participating in sexual activity. Alternatively, aces may identify as sex-favorable, which is not to be confused with sex-positive. I'll be making a whole video on the difference because it's often confused. Anyways, sex-favorable aces will maybe be more inclined to the idea of sex or open to it and open to engaging in sexual activity themselves. Asexuals may also identify as sex indifferent. This, per the title, means they're pretty indifferent to the concept or the idea of participating in sex. They may just not have thought much about it. So aces can identify with any of these terms, none of them. They might not be certain of their feelings around sex, or they may be very certain of their feelings about sex, and the way they feel about sex may fluctuate between these, beyond these, whatever. You can be anything. You can feel anything about sex if you are asexual. If your goal is to understand someone who you know is asexual, your best bet is to just ask them. Though keep in mind that many people may not be comfortable discussing that with you. So we've already established asexuality as a lack of sexual attraction. Sexual desire, otherwise known as sex drive or libido, is a completely different concept, even though they might seem quite similar. Sexual desire describes an active drive for sex or sexual activity. Sexual desire is different from asexuality or sexuality in general in that it's not a desire to have sex with someone specifically, it's rather just the general personal desire for sex. That's the best way I can think to describe it. Sexual desire may translate for many aces to their willingness to participate in sexual acts such as masturbation or sexual activity with a sexual partner. So the desire to have sex is not the same as the desire to have sex with a particular person. The first is sexual desire, and the second is sexual attraction. You can think of it, I remember seeing a post on Avon about, we'll use cake. Maybe you smell the cake and think this cake smells really good. That would be sexual attraction. You smell the cake and without acting on it necessarily, you just think it smells good and maybe you want to eat it. You can also just want to eat cake, even if you didn't smell it. Even if you don't think it smells that good, you might just want to eat cake. You might just feel like it. Oftentimes someone will smell cake and then want to eat it. But sometimes people just want to eat it without smelling it. Liking the smell or the aroma of cake is akin to feeling sexual attraction, whereas wanting to eat the cake regardless of whether you smelled it or not in advance is sexual desire. On a completely different note, sexual activity is completely separate from sexuality and sexual desire. Sexuality and sexual desire are both related to a desire of sorts, something that exists internally. Sexual activity is something that happens maybe externally. I'm sure there's probably arguments to be made for like fantasies and how that could be considered sexual activity or sexual behavior. But as a general, sexual activity is something you do physically. And asexual people may or may not participate in sexual activity. And for the aces who do, they will have different and varying personal reasons for doing so. I know some common ones are to please a partner who does experience sexual attraction, to fulfill some other sort of attraction. For example, you might feel romantically attracted to someone you're having sex with even if you're not sexually attracted to them, and that might make you feel more romantically connected with them. You could also just want to feel close. Maybe the sensory aspect of having sex is fulfilling. There's a lot of different reasons that aces would have sex, but sometimes they don't, and it doesn't really matter. That does not invalidate their asexual identity. And asexuals do not need to justify their sexual activity to you in order to validate their own identity. Not experiencing sexual attraction does not imply that asexual people don't experience other types of attraction. There's a million different types of attraction: romantic, sensual, platonic, alterous, to name a few. There's way more. Oh, sensual, that's a good one. These different types of attraction may be experienced very intensely for those who are asexual, meaning it can be sometimes difficult to differentiate between something like sexual attraction and sensual and platonic attraction, especially if they're super strong. Romantic orientation is also often differentiated by those who identify as asexual. For example, you could be asexual and heteromantic, meaning you don't experience any sexual attraction, but you desire straight relationships or experience romantic attraction for the opposite gender. There's also a romantic orientation known as aromantic, which is the asexual equivalent in romantic attraction, that involves feeling little to no romantic attraction. I'm ace, and I know it can be really difficult to explain asexuality to people who are allosexual or experience sexual attraction, but there are ways to do it. One way I like to go about it is appealing to whoever I'm talking to's sexuality. So for example, if I'm talking to a lesbian woman, I might say, I feel the same way sexually as you do towards men, except it's for everybody. And you can adapt this to anybody's sexual orientation in order to explain a lack of attraction. Of course, you may hit a wall when you are explaining this to a pansexual person, but you can also go about it saying, who's someone you would never experience sexual attraction for? That's how I feel about everybody. In summary, asexuality is a sexual orientation involving feeling little to no sexual attraction. Asexuality exists on a spectrum. Asexuality may influence the relationships a person chooses to have, but not necessarily in a way that is negative or limiting. Asexuality can be separated from someone's feelings or attitude towards sex. These feelings may also exist on a spectrum between sex repulsed and sex favorable, or anywhere in or between or beyond. Sexuality, sexual desire, and sexual activity are three very different, though oftentimes intertwined concepts, and every ace person will navigate them differently. Asexuals may feel a variety of other types of attraction other than sexual attraction. This can include romantic attraction. Asexuality is a unique sexual orientation, and those who identify with the label are no less human than any other human. Finally, please ask me questions. I've made it my personal mission to educate the internet world about often overlooked facets of queerness, including asexuality. I know a lot of asexual people, and if you're asking me questions about asexuality or related topics, I'll be able to answer you in a way that considers the experiences of a lot of different aspec or asexual spectrum identities and people. In fact, I started this YouTube channel situation as a collaboration between my demisexual aromantic friend and my graysexual biromantic friend. Two very different orientations on the asexual spectrum, and on the ace spectrum in general, as in a spectrum. And that's all for now on asexuality. Please ask me questions. Hope you enjoyed your time here. Farewell, love,